Imagine this. You find yourself standing at the edge of a vast forest, the kind so dense and ancient its trees seem to breathe and whisper secrets older than time itself. The sunlight filters through the canopy in fragmented shafts, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the cool, heavy air. The path before you is narrow and indistinct, swallowed by moss and shadows, winding deeper into the unknown. You feel a peculiar urge, not to rush forward but to pause, to listen, to wait. Yet, beneath that urge lies a gnawing tension, a restless impatience urging you to hurry, to conquer, to move beyond uncertainty as quickly as possible. What if the act of waiting itself carries an invisible weight, a paradox as heavy as the forest around you? This tension between the desire for immediacy and the necessity of patience is one of the most profound contradictions you'll ever face. You live in a culture, perhaps even within yourself, that equates patience with passivity, a wasted postponement of doing, achieving, becoming. To be patient is often mistaken for being stagnant, for forfeiting control in a world that demands swift action. But what if patience is far more potent than action? What if, in surrendering the frantic rush towards outcomes, you unlock a deeper flow of life unfolding, one that moves neither too fast nor too slow, but precisely in tune with your deepest becoming? Pause for a moment and consider, why is it so difficult to be patient? Is it merely because of external pressures, the ceaseless ticking of the clock, the deadlines imposed by others, the endless parade of notifications screaming for your attention? Or is there something else, something internal, more insidious? A fear, perhaps, that if you do not impose your will upon time, then time will swallow you whole, that the opportunity will slip through your fingers, that your life will stagnate into meaninglessness. Yet here lies the paradox. In your impatience, you may be suffocating the very seeds of growth that only patience nurtures. Can you see how the urgency to get there blinds you to the unfolding that insists on its own timing? The unfolding that Carl Jung spoke of, not linear progress, but a spiraling dive into yourself, into the shadows and light interwoven within. How often do you rush through moments, desperate for the next milestone, only to later realize that the very moments you wished to escape held the keys to transformation? Imagine the agony of watching a seed buried beneath cold earth, no sprout visible, no sign that life stirs within. Would you dig it up prematurely, fearing it has failed? Or would you wait through the long, invisible process of germination, trusting in the quiet, unseen work beneath the surface? Life, in many ways, is this underground dance, unseen but alive, demanding your patience not as concession but as reverence. Is it possible to redefine patience not as mere endurance but as an active state of presence, a fierce, courageous act of being with the unknown? How often have you mistaken impatience for ambition, mistaking the loud clamor of forced action for meaningful progress? What if the true evolution of your life hinges not on what you forcefully grasp, but on what you allow to unfold in its own time? You might ask, if patience is so vital, why does it feel so unbearable? Why does the heart throb with urgency, the mind spiral into anxiety when things don't align with your timeline? Perhaps because patience confronts you with your own limits, your mortality, your uncertainty, your naked vulnerability before the vastness of existence. It demands you relinquish control, a frightening prospect in a world so obsessed with power and mastery. Yet, within this relinquishment lies a profound paradox. Surrendering control is not losing power but discovering a deeper form of strength. Now, let this question linger. What would happen if you truly cultivated patience, not as a reluctant wait but as a transformative art? Could you observe the ripple effect this cultivated patience has on your life's unfolding? Could the very fabric of your experiences, relationships, and inner world begin to shift, revealing patterns and potentials that were invisible in the frenetic rush? What if patience was not the absence of action, but a different kind of action altogether? A silent, intentional alignment with the rhythms of your psyche and the universe? How would it feel to step out of time's relentless chase and find yourself nestled within a temporal space where life unfolds organically, without push or pull? The urgency of this question presses against the core of your being because the alternative is all too familiar. A life fragmented by haste, marked by missed moments, frayed connections, and the gnawing sensation that something essential always eludes your grasp. Can you afford this cost any longer? As you stand at the threshold of this mysterious forest, this uncharted internal landscape where patience and impatience collide, you may sense that what's required is not another strategy, not a motivational spark, but a fundamental shift in how you relate to time, to process, to yourself. A call to cultivate patience not as a passive virtue, but as an active engagement with life's unfolding mysteries. Before you step forward, consider this. Every moment you resist patience, you rebel against the very architecture of your own growth. Every moment you hesitate or fear pausing, you lose the opportunity to witness subtle transformations germinating beneath the surface. Yet, to embrace patience fully, you must first confront the restless impulse to escape what is. How do you begin this? How do you dare to slow down in a world that demands speed? How do you hold space for the silence and stillness where the alchemy of patience transpires? The answers will not come easily, and the path will not reveal itself in bold declarations. But the journey begins here, with a willingness to dwell in paradox, to wrestle with discomfort, and to open to something greater than immediate gratification. So, will you risk stepping into this quiet, unsettling territory? Will you resist the seduction of impatience long enough to see what life might reveal if you simply wait and watch? This is no ordinary waiting. This is patience as transformation. And as you stand on this brink, the forest ahead thick with shadow and light, you can't help but wonder, how does one cultivate this kind of patience? How does one begin to observe the subtle evolution of life unfolding in response? It is here, at this precipice of uncertainty and possibility, that the real journey beckons. The next step is deeper than you imagined. You feel it, a gnawing, restless itch beneath the skin of your consciousness, a pressure to be elsewhere, to be doing more, to be ahead. This itch is not new. It is as ancient as the human heart but intensified by the cacophony of our modern age. It urges you to leap, to grab, to consume swiftly, to bypass the slow alchemy of becoming. But why does this force grip you so tightly, twisting patience into impatience? Why has the culture you swim in made waiting feel like defeat rather than a discipline of growth? The answer lies folded deep within the architecture of the human psyche, where shadows wrestle with light. Carl Jung, the great explorer of the unconscious, recognized that beneath our conscious facade, there is a primordial tension, a clash between what he called the ego and the self. The ego, your everyday I, is impatient by nature. It wants control, certainty, and immediate results. It fears the void, the descent into darkness where nothing seems to move or change. The self, an archetype of wholeness and integration, calls for a surrender to time, to the cyclical dance of nature and psyche, where transformation emerges only through patience, through an intimate endurance of the unknown. This internal division manifests outwardly in your fractured relation with time. You live in an era that glorifies speed, instant gratification, and perpetual connectivity, forces so potent that they warp your experience of the present moment. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche saw this impatience as a symptom of nihilism, the collapse of meaning when life's deeper rhythms are ignored. Nietzsche warned that in our rush to conquer the world and ourselves, we risk losing the art of long suffering, which is the capacity to endure hardship and delay without despairing or escaping. Arthur Schopenhauer, lurking in the shadows of pessimism, understood this restlessness as the ceaseless craving of the will. The will, he claimed, is an insatiable force driving humanity to desire, strive, and suffer endlessly. It is fundamentally impatient because it knows no peace, only an endless pursuit of more. The culture we inhabit has, perhaps unwittingly, amplified this will's voice, drowning out the quieter call of patience. The will shouts, now, immediately, otherwise lose. Meanwhile, the patient self whispers, trust the unfolding, trust the silence between breaths. Beyond psychology and philosophy, consider the societal machinery fueling this impatience. Aldous Huxley foresaw a dystopia where distraction and entertainment became tools to suppress the very depth that patience necessitates. In a world of instant streaming, rapid news cycles, and perpetual social validation, the collective psyche is trained to expect life to unfold like a fast-forwarded film. Patience becomes an itch to scratch, a tension to relieve rather than a sacred practice. This is not mere coincidence, it is engineered. Markets thrive on your urgency. Identities are shaped by immediacy, not endurance. Jean-Paul Sartre, with his existentialist lens, framed this impatience as a flight from freedom's weight. To wait, to be patient, is to confront the abyss of choice without distraction. It is in the stillness that the crushing reality of your freedom and responsibility emerges. Waiting forces you to face yourself stripped of action, confronting the naked fact of existence. So impatience often becomes a defense mechanism, a frantic gesture to avoid the silent, uncomfortable dialogue with your own being. To be patient is to embrace anxiety, uncertainty, and the raw, unmediated present. Most flee from this terrain. Viktor Frankl, who endured the darkest abyss of human suffering in concentration camps, illustrated a paradox that deepens this tension. He taught that meaning is not found in instant achievement, but through the patient, often agonizing process of enduring and transcending suffering. Impatience robs you of this transcendence, condemning you to a shallow engagement with life's crises. Frankl's insight illuminates how impatience fractures identity, reducing you to the sum of your frustrations and desires, rather than the resilient being capable of integrating pain and hope. So this deep-seated impatience is not merely a personal flaw or a social inconvenience. It is a profound existential dilemma. It unravels your sense of self, fractures your emotional equilibrium, and erodes the very soil from which authentic growth springs. When you rush, you inhabit a shadow self driven by fear and desire, disconnected from the deeper rhythms that regulate life's evolution. This shadow self reacts, consumes, escapes. It never waits because it cannot bear the vulnerability of presence. Yet the consequences are more insidious than mere impatience. This distortion warps your experience of time into a tyranny, where the present moment becomes a battleground, either a hostile scene of insufficient progress or a dead weight of unbearable stillness. You become fragmented, a being in perpetual crisis between craving and frustration. Your emotions oscillate violently between anxiety, anger, and despair. Your identity, once robust in its capacity for integration, now trembles on unstable ground, caught in the tension between who you are and who you demand yourself to become immediately. The paradox emerges. Your impatient self is both the agent and the victim of its own torment. In an ironic twist, the very impatience that promises control and fulfillment ends up enslaving you to a cycle of dissatisfaction and distraction. It blinds you to the hidden, slow currents beneath your life's surface, the subtle transformations that require time, silence, and surrender to unfold. Your impatience is a shadow mask, a cloak that veils the profound creative intelligence of life's natural pace, the rhythm to which you are ultimately bound. Can you begin to sense how deeply this conflict goes? It is not just about waiting longer or biting your tongue in difficult moments. It is about unlearning a cultural myth and rediscovering an archetypal truth, that to truly evolve, to witness life's delicate unfoldings, you must first reconcile with time itself. You must learn to see patience not as a passive end, but as a dynamic, deeply active force, a dialogue with the unknown where your ego waits humbly, ready to greet the self. And yet beneath this understanding, a darker question presses. What happens if you do not cultivate patience? What fractures deepen within the psyche? What life chances dissolve in the erosive flood of impatience? There is a slow, subterranean erosion at work, a dissolution of inner harmony that threatens to unravel not only your emotional health but the very foundation of your being. The path you confront is not merely about quiet endurance. It is a fierce, often lonely confrontation with the turbulent forces that shape human existence. It challenges the very definition of who you think you are, the restless ego urging you onward, the deeper self inviting you to pause, and the societal pressures that pull you between. Understanding these underpinning forces is the first step in unmasking the illusion that impatience is inevitable. You find yourself on a fragile knife edge, poised between the compelling rush of immediate desire and the radical surrender that patience demands. What choice will you make when you realize that this impatience is not your true nature, but a shadow cast by fear, culture, and the will's insatiable hunger? To move forward, you must recognize this invisible architecture within yourself. You must see impatience not as mere weakness but as a profound signal, an invitation to delve deeper into your psychological and existential makeup. This is the crucible in which patience is forged, a process both terrifying and liberating. But before the transformation can begin, you must first endure the realization that your current relationship with time, desire, and selfhood is fractured, flawed not by chance, but by forces ancient and systemic, psychological and societal, each compounding the other to trap you in restless striving. And the cost of ignoring this truth, a life lived on the surface, fragmented and shallow, a self lost in the noise of its own impatience, unable to witness the quiet miracle of its own becoming. How long will you allow this to continue? How long before you heed the call beneath the storm? The choice remains, but the tension rises. And somewhere deep inside, the seed of patience awaits, not as a polite request but as a challenge, a reckoning, and perhaps the first breath of a new way to be. You stand at the threshold of a less visible battleground, one where your impatience weaves itself into the very fabric of your perception, not through grand gestures, but in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. It is here, beneath the radar of conscious awareness, that the machinery of your mind and the invisible hand of culture conspire to trap you. Have you ever noticed how your attention is a fickle magnet, pulled relentlessly toward what promises quick satisfaction or immediate results? This is no accident, no mere lapse of willpower. Neuroscience reveals that your brain's reward system, the tangled web of dopamine pathways, is wired to favor the immediate over the delayed, the flashy over the slow-burning. Each swipe, each ping, each instant gratification releases a tiny flood of this chemical, reinforcing a habit that shapes not only how you act but how you perceive the very passage of time. The seconds themselves seem to collapse into a hunger for speed. Yet beyond the synapses firing in your personal brain, there is a larger, more insidious conditioning underway. Society, with its relentless pulse of deadlines, fast communication, and consumer culture, conditions you to believe that waiting is a luxury you cannot afford. The culture of now is not merely a backdrop, it is a powerful architect of your reality. It distorts the meaning of time, urging you to equate speed with success and patience with weakness or failure. You become complicit in a collective illusion that the slow unfolding of life is a problem in need of urgent fixing, rather than a process to be honored and witnessed. Within this invisible framework, cognitive biases act as silent enforcers. The availability heuristic, for example, hands you a distorted map of reality. Memories and outcomes that are vivid and recent seem disproportionately likely. When your impatience seeks proof that waiting is futile, it finds it effortlessly, because the mind simplifies complex patterns into sensational, immediate examples. Confirmation bias tells you that your impatience is justified because you selectively attend to evidence supporting it, ignoring the slow, quiet successes that accumulate beneath the surface of your awareness. The very architecture of your thought reroutes you away from patience, shrouding the virtue in doubt and frustration. And as these mental traps tighten, you may not even notice the full extent of their sway. Your relationships suffer silently as impatience erodes empathy and understanding, qualities that require time to blossom. Your work becomes a series of urgent projects without depth or resonance, a carousel spinning faster and faster, yet moving nowhere real. Your sense of self fragments, juggling desires and responsibilities in an endless scramble, never resting long enough to integrate experience or insight. Look deeper still, and you find this impatience encoded into the collective psyche, embedded in the myths that glorify heroic conquests of instant gain, in economies designed around rapid turnover, in education systems that prize quick answers over reflective inquiry. These societal forces do not merely influence you from the outside. They become internalized rules, scripts you enact reflexively. Patience becomes a foreign concept, a forgotten art that you might even scorn in yourself. This is the unseen trap of your inner world mirroring the external, a feedback loop where restlessness breeds impatience, impatience breeds superficiality, and superficiality feeds back into restless striving. It is a prison formed not by iron bars, but by the very structure of your expectations and perceptions. Can you feel the weight of this invisible cage? The claustrophobia of a life accelerating toward nowhere meaningful. The urgency here is not theoretical, it is existential. For if you never break free from this neurological and cultural spell, your experience of time will remain fragmented, your capacity for depth diminished, and your life will pass without the quiet alchemy of transformation. And yet, within this tension, there brews a paradox. The very impatience that imprisons you also points toward the possibility of freedom. Like a signal flaring in the darkness, it calls attention to the fissures in your current reality, the cracks where change can begin. But what must you do to answer this call? How can you see the contours of this trap clearly enough to step beyond it? The breakthrough you seek is near, yet it demands something more than willpower. It demands a reconfiguration of your inner architecture, a reorientation toward time, desire, and being that feels almost alien. For now, the fog remains thick, the machinery hums, the pressures mount, but beneath it all the seed of awareness stirs, waiting for the moment when you can perceive the trap in its entirety and thus begin to dismantle it. Will you risk the discomfort of seeing these hidden forces for what they are, knowing that only through this clarity can patience truly take root? The tension tightens, the moment approaches, and the next breath you take could change everything. What if everything you thought you knew about progress, success, and the hurried rhythms of life was not only incomplete but profoundly misleading? Imagine for a moment that the frantic sprint toward achievement, the endless chase after outcomes, the fixation on instant gratification, all these are shackles disguised as wings. What if the true liberation lies not in accelerating, but in the exact opposite, in waiting, in surrendering to the slow unfolding of time, in cultivating an unshakable patience that defies the instincts of your very nature? This is no mere philosophical abstraction. Carl Jung, this pioneer of the human psyche beneath the facade, recognized patience not as passive endurance, but as a profound act of courage and transformation. To be patient is to dwell long enough in the shadows of uncertainty, confusion, and inner turmoil to unearth the hidden gold buried there. It is to resist the seductive power of premature closure, to refuse the temptation of quick fixes and superficial answers that leave the soul fragmented and restless. You might recoil. How can waiting, something so seemingly inert, hold the key to power? Has not history rewarded the bold, the swift, the unyielding? Yet, if you look closer, the arc of meaningful change bends toward a different kind of strength. Consider Nelson Mandela, languishing in prison for 27 years, not merely enduring but transforming his suffering into a wellspring of insight, patience, and ultimate redemption for his people. Or Vincent van Gogh, who toiled in obscurity and despair for decades, grappling with inner demons, before his art finally pierced the fabric of culture and time. These were not people who raced ahead. They were individuals who allowed themselves to be shaped by time's slow hand, to learn what impatience cannot teach. This radical shift asks you to see patience, paradoxically, as an act of fierce mastery over time rather than its slave. Why? Because impatience fractures perception. It blinds you to the intricate web of causality and meaning that ripples beneath every surface event. Patience, on the other hand, is the slow unfolding of depth perception in the landscape of your life. It enables you to witness the subtle connections, the hidden patterns, the invisible forces that impatience masks with its distracting clamor. Herein lies the revolutionary insight. To cultivate patience is not to resign yourself to inertia. It is to reclaim your agency from the tyranny of immediate demand. It is to choose the rhythm of your own becoming rather than surrendering to the relentless tempo dictated by external noise and internal anxiety. It is to realize that control is not about forcing outcomes, but about mastering your relationship to time, desire, and uncertainty. This inner sovereignty is a battlefield where the war is fought silently and invisibly. You will discover that when you stretch the tiny intervals between impulse and action, between desire and gratification, you create a space in which conscious choice germinates. In that space, you move from reactive automatism to intentional creation of your reality. This is the alchemy of patience, transforming the base metal of restlessness into the gold of presence. Imagine what it means to anchor yourself in this new way of being. You begin to inhabit a mindset where uncertainty is not a threat but a fertile field, where delay is not deprivation but preparation, where obstacles are not dead ends but invitations to deepen your understanding. This is the opposite of what modern culture prescribes, and therein lies its revolutionary power. Look back to the slow revolutions of history, not the headlines of sudden upheaval, but the quiet revolutions of mind and spirit that unfolded in the hidden chambers of time. The Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree for days, resisting every impulse to flee or give up until enlightenment dawned. The Renaissance was not built in a day, but through generations of patient inquiry and restless questioning beneath the surface of stultifying dogma. These moments teach us the deepest transformations are bred in the soil of patience. And what of your own life? What if the storms of doubt and frustration you endure now are precisely the crucible from which your most profound growth will emerge, if only you refuse to abandon the process too soon? To radically embrace patience is to awaken the dormant power within you to sculpt your destiny, not with frantic force but with mindful, deliberate persistence. You are not powerless in this. You hold the key to dismantling the neurosis of impatience precisely by learning to hold the tension it produces without collapsing into despair or escape. To live patiently is to be willing to live fully in the liminal space where transformation gestates unseen. You become the alchemist who transfigures time from an enemy into an ally, who reshapes your inner landscape so that external life begins to mirror this new coherence. This shift demands a reorientation of desire itself. Desire, stripped of its impatience, becomes not a harried craving but a steady flame, fierce yet calm, burning with purpose but flowing with grace. It becomes a companion to patience, not its rival. You will find that when desire is tempered by patience, it does not diminish but deepens. It does not burn out but sustains. To cultivate this balance, start with a fundamental question. What if the value of your pursuit lies not in the outcome but in the process itself? What if success, fulfillment, and meaning are not destinations but emergent qualities of a life lived attentively within time's slow cadence? When you grasp this, you begin to reclaim your life from the tyranny of urgency. This reclamation is a form of rebellion, against cultural scripts, against your own conditioned reflexes, against the illusion that life's worth is measured by speed. It is a revolutionary act because it rewires your very experience of reality. In doing so, it awakens a dormant reservoir of power that no external force can usurp. The power to transform your life lies not in bending the world to your will with haste, but in bending your will to the shaping power of time and patience. It is here, in this subtle and often unseen mastery, that true freedom resides. Do you dare to discover this power, to step beyond the frantic pulse of convention, and inhabit a new rhythm, one that allows life to evolve in its own mysterious and profound unfolding? If you do, you will find that patience is not the defeat of desire but its highest expression. It is the soil from which all meaningful growth emerges, a growth that is not only sustainable but deeply liberating. This is no mere waiting. This is a revolution of the soul. You have traveled far in the terrain of patience, peeling back layer after layer of your own urgency, and now you stand on a precipice where something radical presses against your mind, a revelation that distorts everything you thought you knew about time, suffering, and growth. The truth waits here, shrouded in paradox, demanding a surrender to what Carl Jung whispered through his ageless wisdom, that the deepest transformation does not occur by forcing the world to bend, but by bending yourself like a tree to the unseen winds of time. What if all your struggles, the impatience, the frustration, the endless striving, were not hindrances but essential threads woven into the fabric of your becoming? Not obstacles to overcome, but the crucible through which your soul's alchemy unfolds. Can you imagine that the very pain you sought to escape is the pressure that sharpens your inner vision, and the delay you despised is the silence where your true self gathers strength? Look closely. The impatience you judge as weakness is, in fact, a misunderstood messenger. It signals the gap between your current self and the self you are destined to become. It exposes the fissures where change is brewing beneath the surface. To fight it is to resist the ripening of your evolution. To embrace it is to enter into a sacred dialogue with your own growth. This is the paradox Jung invites you to hold. Your impatience is both your torment and your tutor. And here lies the deepest secret. Time is not your enemy but your most profound ally. The flow of time, with all its agonizing delays and halting progress, is the womb where your transformation gestates. When you shed the illusion that life is a race to be won or a series of goals to be conquered, you begin to perceive the subtle orchestration of forces working beneath the surface. You become a witness to an unfolding mystery, one that is at once terrifying and breathtaking. Your life is not a linear narrative but a fractal dance of becoming, each moment echoing the infinite patterns of growth and decay, loss and renewal. The impatience that once felt like a frantic ticking clock slowly reveals itself as the pulse of a deeper rhythm. You start to understand that what you sought to force into existence will emerge only in its own time, like a lotus blooming beneath murky waters, slowly, slowly, beyond your control, yet perfectly inexorable. Do you see now how suffering and patience are entwined, not adversaries, but lovers in a cosmic dance? The wounds you carry are not signs of failure, but of engagement with the profound mystery of life. To endure patiently, to lean into the discomfort without flinching, is to wield a power far greater than instant gratification, the power to bear the darkness until it births light. This bearing is itself a kind of victory, a defiance of despair that no external triumph can replicate. What if your entire existence is less about getting somewhere and more about being here, fully, painfully, and patiently here? What if the meaning you crave is not something waiting hidden in the future, but something to be coaxed from the present moment's raw material? When patience becomes presence, time ceases to be a cage and becomes a companion, a wise teacher who murmurs secrets only the patient ear can hear. The world you have known, the one that values speed, efficiency, and constant accomplishment, is a mirage obscuring a deeper reality. Beyond this illusion lies a realm where the soul's true work unfolds, the slow, intricate weaving of shadow and light, the surrender to cycles that defy your commands. Here, you learn that the self you chase is not a fixed prize, but a living mystery that reveals itself only in the crucible of time and patience. So stand now in this place of knowing, where past struggles fall away like autumn leaves, their meaning unveiled by the soft light of patience. Feel the quiet power that radiates from within, the power to hold space for yourself amid the chaos, to trust the slow unfolding even when hope flickers thin. This is not resignation. This is awakening. This is the courageous act of living fully, even when the path is shrouded. Let this revelation haunt you. Your impatience has been the shadow cast by your deepest yearning, the yearning not just for success or happiness but for wholeness, for reconciliation with time itself. To cultivate patience is to embrace this shadow, to integrate it into the radiant core of your being. In that alchemical union, your life transcends the tyranny of haste and opens to the vast, fertile silence where true transformation blossoms. Will you dare to live in this silent revolution? To let the slow fire of patience reshape your soul's landscape until you see your past struggles not as scars but as sacred geometry, patterns of your becoming. To transform impatience from a curse into a gateway, a threshold into a new dimension of existence. If you can answer yes, then you have stepped beyond the ordinary confines of your experience. You have embraced the timeless dance of patience and desire. And in that embrace, you have begun to witness how life evolves, not as a battlefield to be won, but as a profound mystery to be lived fully, moment by moment, breath by breath. The question now is no longer, how long must I wait? But how deeply can I be present within this waiting? Will you allow patience to become your most radical act of freedom? If you do, the contours of your world will shift, revealing the hidden architecture of growth behind every setback, the sacred pulse beneath every delay, the infinite potential nestled within the slow unfolding of your life. This is the revelation Jung offers, not a simple prescription, but an invitation to radical transformation. To see patience not as passive endurance but as active engagement with the mystery of existence. To understand that in patience's quiet crucible, the soul is forged anew and the self is born, not in haste or force, but in the sacred rhythm of time. So return now to yourself, bearing this truth like a torch in the dark. The evolution you seek is already in motion, flowering in the silent chambers of your inner world. Trust this process. Nurture it. And watch as your life, once tangled in the restless grip of impatience, unfolds with a grace that defies all urgency, a grace only the patient soul can know. The revolution is silent, the transformation imperceptible to the hurried eye, but for those who cultivate patience after this, after embracing the paradoxes, the wounds, the waiting, that revolution becomes the very heartbeat of their existence. Will yours?